Awesome. The font is going to look a little weird every time you see Artemis, only because the font that was on my laptop that is not working right now had a cool fancy font, so I just want you to kind of use your imagination and picture that font every time it says Artemis to be something kind of cooler. So that's my first challenge to you. Anyway, I'm really excited to be here and speak to everybody about our NASA's next generation of deep space travel called the Artemis Program. I'm also going to give you a kind of short, but actually not short at all, story of how I ended up at NASA. I think you'll be surprised at my story. And of course, I'll go over the eclipse. You guys know there's an eclipse happening, right? You heard about that? Yeah? All right, good. Good. And I have a few little giveaways if anybody is brave enough to speak up and answer some of the questions I'm going to just throw out there. They'll be easy, though, I promise.
If you have questions, would you like us to wait till the end, or should we just raise our hand?
Great question.
Because I'm a question asker, so I just need to know what the...
Let's wait till the end.
Sure.
Thank you for asking. Good. Okay, cool. Whoops, whoop, we're going back. It's cruising, it's cruising. There we go. I will get used to this new screen. Okay, so hi, my name is Hunter Goodenow. I am a program and budget analyst for the Exploration Ground Systems down at Kennedy Space Center. That's part of a tri-program that is part of the Artemis program that's launching humans back to the moon. Specifically, I oversee all of the budget and schedule for all the communication systems that are required for launching a rocket. So when I say communications, I mean anything that kind of talks to anything else. Audio, visual. If you ever see a NASA video of a rocket that launches up, my budget and schedule that I look at is the cameras that actually recorded that. They also throw odds and ends of things, so if there's sometimes not a bucket of money to put it in, and it might have qualified for communications, they'll throw it on to my budget as well. It's super important that we keep an eye on the schedule and the budget of everything that we do. We have a lot of projects going on all at the same time. And schedules change and budgets change, as anybody who's tried to renovate their house would know that. And one of my jobs is to make sure that the plumber and the person redoing your tile in your bathroom don't show up on the same day. So that's kind of an easy way to connect what I do. Of course, you know, launching rockets is a little bit more complicated than renovating your home, but as a new homeowner, that is also complicated to me as I learn that as well. Other than what I do, these are pictures of me. On the right here, on my right, your left, this guy right here is me. I was probably 12 or 13. And behind me is the Vehicle Assembly Building at Kennedy Space Center. Does anybody know what we do at the Vehicle Assembly Building?
Assemble rockets.
Assemble rockets is a good answer. And you get a little patch.
Ooh. Is it the right answer?
That is the right answer. Yes, so the Vehicle Assembly Building is where we stack and process our flight hardware to connect it all together. We do some tests there, and then we roll it out to the pad and launch. So that is the Vehicle Assembly Building behind me. It is very big. It's the largest single-story building in the world. They say that it's so big that they can create its own atmosphere sometimes inside. I've been in it multiple times. I haven't seen its own atmosphere, but I also can't prove them wrong either. It's incredible. So moving on to this photo here, this was me, my internship, my first week at NASA, and I'm actually on the roof of the VAB, or the Vehicle Assembly Building. NASA is all acronyms, so I will be using acronyms across this entire presentation, but I will try to define them and remember to define them as I go. So it's kind of cool to see me not even knowing that I was going to be at NASA when I was 13 years old, just visiting the visitor center, and then here I am on the roof on my first week at NASA, X amount of years later. This is me at MegaCon. I was supporting NASA, almost wearing the exact same shoes I'm wearing today. So MegaCon is where a bunch of people come and do like costumes and look at all this anime, games, and Dungeons and Dragons and all sorts of stuff, and we always go and support that as well. And this was my first year actually sitting on the panel where you sit and you can answer questions and stuff similar to this. This was my first time doing something like I'm doing today, so I thought it was really important to kind of point that out. I have a lot of hobbies. One of them is travel, and I also like to go see indie bands. And so that is me with my wife, Courtney. We've been married for almost 4 years, been together for 10. She's a teacher, so go teachers. And I'm actually wearing an Artemis shirt in that photo. And then over here, I love making pasta. It's one of my hobbies. I love cooking. If someone were to say, what's your biggest hobby? What do you do when you're not working or fixing your house? I would say cooking is my #1 hobby. And when I was at the Culinary Institute earlier today, they were very happy to hear that. In fact, I had more questions for them than they had for me. And then up top is my best friend. His name's Benny. He's a black cat. Anybody who says black cats are not photogenic obviously have not seen that picture. So that's just a little bit about me, and I will talk about my career a little further down in the presentation. So what I'm also here to talk about is Artemis. So Artemis is the program that I work for. It's named after, in Greek mythology, Artemis was the twin sister of Apollo and the goddess of the moon. Does anybody know why we chose to name this program the twin sister of Apollo? Any guesses?
Isn't Apollo like the god of the sun?
Apollo is the god of the sun, actually. That's a really good guess, and you're going to get a patch for answering.
Is it because the Apollo mission brought us to
Yep, that's absolutely right. So we named our program Artemis because we are going back to the moon, where the Apollo missions back in the late 60s and early 70s were when we went to the moon for the first time. So it's kind of a really cool kind of play on both where we've been and then where we're going. So this is the new generation of NASA, and this is deep space exploration and science and where we're going. I really hope that when we are consistently sending humans to the moon, and we have a sustained presence there, that the things that we do today with these first Artemis missions, we'll look back and say that was the true first milestone on humanity going to the moon and then on to Mars. So I really feel like we are a cornerstone of humanity, and this is our first steps. There's a saying that we have, and you'll hear it probably in some of the videos, and that saying is, we are going. And when I say we are going, it's not me, and it's not we at NASA are going. A space generation is a collective effort of a country. It's really a collective effort of humanity. So teachers, students, parents, tech companies, commercial partners, federal government, international partners. Everybody here is showing interest in this. Everybody who's watching the eclipse. We are all we, as we are going. And it's really all of us. And you all are as important as us at NASA are for the success of our space program. So thank you. So, I got another question for you. Why the moon? We've already been there. Why?
Isn't it that they want to use the moon as a kind of launch pad to go to Mars?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Great. I got a patch for you. Yo, you guys get all these questions, but I run out of patches. Right? So, the moon is, in all actuality, pretty close compared to Mars, right? So we want to use the moon as a proving ground for our true goal, which is to send humans to Mars. Now, why do we need a proving ground? Why do we need to test somewhere? Why can't we just send humans to Mars and go?
Because Mars, it would be a lot harder to go to Mars, and it'd be like when you go somewhere on an airplane, you can stop and then rest and then go to the place.
Right, so it's much harder. I have patches, just remember I ate a patch, right? Yeah, so Mars is going to be about a 2-year mission, on the positives, on the optimistic side, about a two-year mission, which means if we send humans there, we need to be able to have our humans be self-sustaining. They need to be able to grow their own food, grow their own, or find water and use water. and everything else that it would require to keep humans alive. We can't just like Amazon Prime them more food. I don't think that they can do 2-day shipping to Mars. So in order to test to see how we do that, we can do it on the moon. Although they're not exactly the same, if we can figure out a way to grow plants on Mars, or on the moon, if we can figure out how to take the ice on the moon and turn it into water, if we can figure out how to create oxygen, if we can figure it out there, then we can figure out a way to be self-sustaining on Mars. So it's definitely an important part of why we're going. Any other guesses? It's okay if you don't have another guess. I have a bunch of answers that I'm about to have right here.
We are going.
Told you.
The history of this agency is marked with broken barriers, once viewed as impossible, with science fiction turned reality, with innovations that have spun industries all their own, and with demonstrations of peace for all humankind.
We soar in the skies of our planet. We maintain a human presence just outside of gravity, and we touch points all across the solar system and beyond. We're going back to the moon, and this is why.
The moon is a treasure trove of science. It holds opportunities for us to make discoveries about our home planet, about our sun, and about our solar system.
The wealth of knowledge that we glean from the moon will inspire a new generation of thought and action.
Without fail, every major program and mission NASA has invested in has led to technologies and capabilities that have shaped our culture.
The breakthroughs of the Artemis era will define our generation and the generations to follow.
The tens of thousands of jobs associated with propelling us to the moon today are just the beginning of a lunar economy that will see hundreds of thousands of new jobs develop around the world.
This is not an ambition of one entity or one country. The exploration of the moon is a shared effort.
Woven together by the desire for the greater good.
Why the moon? Because the missions of tomorrow will be sparked by the accomplishments of the Artemis generation today.
Because the ambition to go has already begun.
And because Mars is calling, we need to learn what it takes to establish a community on another cosmic shore. So let's get close before pushing out.
And so, we go to the moon now, not as a series of isolated missions, but to build a community on and around the moon, capable of proving how to live on other worlds.
So now we know why we want to go back to the moon, right? And something that video maybe said, but I'm going to say it in maybe a different way. I mean, I think humanity has this innate want to explore. And I think that we've explored Earth pretty significantly. You know, we're exploring oceans. But I think it's just the human nature and the drive is to see what's next and where do we go next. And I think that if it wasn't the moon, it would be something else. And I think NASA is just a great it's a great agency that always is going to do that and just chase that next step. It's in our nature to do that. We always ask what's next. So, how do we get to the moon? Right now we know why we're going. How do we get there? We get there with the Artemis Program. And the Artemis Program is a tri-program, so it's not just one program, it's 3 programs. And we all work at different NASA centers across the country doing separate things, all with the same mission, which is to get humans to the moon and back safely and have a sustained presence there to be able to move on and go to Mars. So the first of the 3 programs that I'm going to tell you about is the SLS. I told you there's a bunch of acronyms. The SLS stands for the Space Launch System. That's going to be the rocket itself. It's going to be that orange core stage we call it, along with the engines. That's built at LaSalle Assembly in the southeast. This rocket has more power and more capability than any rocket that exists. It's the only rocket that is this powerful that has fully completed a mission. It's the most powerful rocket that NASA has ever built. It's the only rocket that's an exploration class vehicle capable of sending humans to deep space. The SLS has the power to lift both payloads, so stuff, and humans at the same time. The reason why we went with something big and powerful is because we're able to lift more with less launches. Don't quote me on the numbers here, but I know that building the International Space Station, it took upwards of 20 missions for the space shuttle to build that International Space Station. I think the SLS rocket would have been able to do it in 4 or 5 to understand the power that it has. The SLS is also capable of changing the way that it's assembled in order to handle the mission at hand. We can put humans on it with the Orion capsule, which we'll talk about next. We can put payloads on it. We have different called configurations depending on what we're doing that can carry more and bigger. So there is a level of customizable payloads or customizable configurations to be able to do what we need to do. So that is the SLS, Space Launch System. That's the first part of the program. The second is called Orion. Orion is the actual spacecraft that we're going to take humans further than they've ever gone before. Orion was on Artemis 1, but there was no humans on it. But when Artemis 1 launched, and I'll talk about that in a moment, it was the furthest that a human-rated spacecraft has ever gone from Earth in the history of mankind. What's really amazing about this is this Orion capsule will be able to sustain the crew while they're traveling, and it will provide a safe re-entry, because obviously we want to bring our astronauts home. It's going to be able to accommodate 99% of the human population, which means you can be either 4'10" or you can be 6'5", and you can still be an astronaut, which of course makes our net larger when we're trying to find the best and brightest to be our astronauts to support these missions, which is really cool. It's 30% by cubic volume larger than the Apollo capsule, which doesn't sound like a lot, 30%, but if you've ever been to Kennedy Space Center and actually seen one of the Apollo capsules, you'll see how small it was. And if you were an astronaut, you would take any percent larger that you could possibly get. We can fit 4 astronauts inside the Orion capsule. So when the Orion comes back, right, we have an atmosphere on Earth, and we use it. So we use it to kind of slow down naturally going through the atmosphere because we're going so fast we come in almost the speed of a bullet as we come back in from a mission. The problem is, even though we're using it as kind of free breaks, it's very, 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 very hot. I would say it's about 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit is how hot it gets, or 4,000 degrees Fahrenheit is how hot it gets as it comes in. To put that in perspective, the lava inside the Hawaiian volcanoes is about 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit, and the surface of the sun is about 10,000. So it's about twice as hot as lava, and it's about half as hot as the surface of the sun. So of course at NASA, that's a problem that we've solved. We use a thing called heat shields, and it's able to kind of protect as it enters, and it can withstand temperatures up to 4,900 degrees to be able to protect, obviously, the crew as they come splash down. So it's extremely incredible. And that is the Orion program. Now, once they build the SLS, Space Launch System, and the Orion capsule, they send it to Kennedy Space Center. And it is part of the program that I work for, which is called EGS, or Exploration Ground Systems. We are responsible for everything that involves launching the rocket other than building the rocket and building the capsule. We receive them, we stack them inside the vehicle assembly building. You can actually roll a Statue of Liberty right on in with room to spare. We roll our rocket on something called the crawler. It's able to obviously hold a lot of weight, but it doesn't go very fast. Once it has flight hardware on there, it goes about 1 mile an hour. So it rolls out from the VAB all the way to the launch pad, which is about 3 or 4 miles. Takes all day. We also have this thing called the mobile launcher. Our pad, 39B, we call it a clean pad. So we do not have our launcher sitting at the pad at all times. We actually take the crawler, we lift up The mobile launcher, we roll that into the VAB. We connect the rocket that we've stacked inside that VAB. We take it all as one thing. We roll it out to the pad. We launch, and then we roll the mobile launcher with the crawler back into the VAB. And they all have to work together. They all have to talk to each other. They all have to know what's going on. And my program is in charge of making sure all that works. We also have over here, I picked this picture because you can see so much of the things we do all at once working together. Over here we have the LCC, or the Launch Control Center. When you see a movie and you see picturing somebody hitting like "We Are Go" for launch, and somebody hits a button, and then there's windows, and then you see the launch go up, that is where that really happens. And we are in charge of making sure that all of the software works inside what we call the firing room, which is where what you're picturing in your head of everybody sitting there on the computers, making sure everything works. That's called the firing room. We are in charge of making sure all the software and hardware are able to talk to each other and work there as well. Fun little fact is Artemis has the first female launch director, Charlie Blackwell Thompson. So I'm a little biased. I think this one's awesome. So next I have a video with Joe Acaba.
Hello, I am NASA astronaut Joseph Acaba, coming to you from the Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. I studied and worked hard, graduating high school in California, and then earning both a bachelor's and master's degrees in geology. While working as an astronaut after my last flight, I earned a master's degree in education, an area I strongly believe in. Education opens doors to so many opportunities. Much of my life has revolved around education, both as a student and a teacher. My education got me to where I am today. When I became an astronaut, it was like going right back to school. We have to learn all about our spacecraft, we learn to speak Russian, and we train in high-speed, high-risk operational environments to help us get ready for a space mission. I've flown 3 missions, 1 aboard the Space Shuttle Discovery, and twice on the Russian Soyuz spacecraft. Missions lasted from 2 weeks up to 6 months. Here at NASA, we continue to advance the research and technology to return humans to the moon. We are still pushing forward with plans to send the first woman and first person of color to the moon under NASA's Artemis Program. No human has set foot on the moon since Apollo 17 in 1972. So the possibility of landing on the moon is incredible. On November 16, we watched Artemis 1 launch and execute the first lunar orbit in more than 50 years. This was the first integrated flight test of NASA's deep space exploration systems, the Orion spacecraft, Space Launch System rocket, and the ground systems at Kennedy Space Center in Cape Canaveral all came together for this extraordinary mission. Artemis 1 traveled a total of 1.3 million miles to the moon and back. After a 25-day mission, Orion successfully splashed down on December 11th in the Pacific Ocean. The capsule is now back at Kennedy Space Center, where it is being tested and studied. Up next will be Artemis 2, taking astronauts to the moon, and it will be here before we know it. I'm currently the chief of the astronaut office, ensuring crew safety and mission success. My hopes are to inspire the next generation of explorers and leaders, and to help elevate, build awareness, and highlight the teaching profession and its importance to our society. As you learn more about NASA and all that we do, I want you to remember that we are all crew members aboard a space station, our beautiful planet Earth. Viewing the Earth from space reminds us that we all share the same orbiting sphere as we travel around the sun together.
So let's talk about these Artemis missions. So like Joe just mentioned, Artemis 1 launched November 16, 2022 at 1:47 a.m. at Kennedy Space Center off pad 39B. I was there. It was really cool because this was the first mission that I had touched that I've actually seen launch. It was amazing leading up to it to see all of these things theoretical on PowerPoint presentations and drawings, being in meetings where we were talking theoretical, and then slowly those theories turned into real flight hardware that I saw come to the center, and then all of a sudden we were rolling out the whole thing for tests. And then we got to go and actually see it launch. I was 3 miles away, which is the closest you can be without being harmed by the sound. It was definitely the best day of my career, one of the best days of my life. This is being recorded. My wedding was also one of my best days of my life. It was absolutely amazing. If you can ever find yourself down at Kennedy Space Center during any of the Artemis launches, I would highly recommend doing what you can to get down there because it is historical. We had about 1 million people come down and see it, very similar to this this weekend with the eclipse. So look forward to the traffic you guys are about to enjoy. So this one is really, really cool. So this is our Orion capsule taking a selfie. It's on one of the solar arrays. There was a camera on one of the solar arrays that are sticking out, and it took a selfie. So yeah, even NASA takes selfies. Pretty neat, right? This is the splashdown of the Orion capsule for Artemis 1. Again, there was no humans in this capsule, but we were able to make sure we tested everything and make sure everything worked. Splashes down into the Pacific Ocean, and then we work with the Navy to actually go and recover it. My program, the Exploration Ground Systems, is also in charge of the recovery of the Orion capsule. After its descent and going through those extremely hot temperatures. So, what's on the horizon? Artemis 2. Anybody know what the biggest difference between Artemis 1 and Artemis 2 is going to be? Any guesses?
There'll be people on Artemis?
There will be people on Artemis 2. Oh, remember, I'll give you something else.
I had done solar swag today.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so there's going to be people on Artemis 2. We're going to have a crew of 4. And I'd like to show you that crew right now.
When I was young, I had a poster of the Earthrise picture, the famous picture that was taken on Apollo 8. And the fact that it was a human behind the lens that made that picture so profound and changed how we all thought of our own home was so amazing to me. The moon is not just a symbol of thinking about our place in the universe. It's not just a symbol of exploration. It's actually a beacon for science. It's a beacon for understanding where we came from.
You know, pushing ourselves to explore is just core of who we are. It's a part of being a human. That's our nature. We go out there and we explore to learn about where we are, why we are, understanding the big questions about our place in the universe. The exploration we're doing is the first few steps on the path of getting humans to Mars.
The Artemis campaign and missions have set such an ambitious goal for humanity that it's inspiring contributions from around the globe. Not just one nation is inspired and moved by this, but nations from around the globe are coming together. When I look at the Artemis 2 crew with Victor, Christina, and Jeremy, they want to go do this mission. They are keenly driven. They are humble to a fault. It is so cool to be around them. Artemis 2 is a huge mission, but I hope we will look back and realize that this was one tiny step in humans on Mars and sustained presence on Earth. Artemis 2 will be NASA's first crewed flight test of the Space Launch System rocket and Orion spacecraft over the moon.
To verify today's capabilities for humans to explore deep space
And pave the way for NASA's long-term human and scientific presence on the lunar surface.
we are ready.
We will go
To the moon.
for all of humanity.
We are artists.
Pretty cool, right? So Jeremy Hansen, who's a Canadian astronaut, he will actually be here this weekend doing, I'm sure, autographs, pictures. I don't know where he's going to be or when. I also haven't met him.
The guy from Artemis 2 is going to be
Like the guy from...
the astronaut at the high school on Saturday?
Yes.
I thought he was just like a retired astronaut. I didn't know he was the astronaut.
He's the guy.
Oh, that's cool.
I always like to think of Artemis 2 equivalent to Apollo 8, which was the first time we sent humans with a destination to the moon. and that's where that Earthrise photo came from. So it's really cool to kind of be part of the next history in the making. Artemis 2 is, our manifest says it's going to launch September of 2025, which is going to be incredible. So after that, we have Artemis 3. I don't have videos for the next two. So Artemis 3, and I'm just going to kind of glance through these because they're a little further out. So Artemis 3 is going to, right now our manifest says, September of 2026. This is where we're going to land on the moon for the first time in over 50 years. It's going to be not only NASA, but we're going to work with SpaceX as well. They're designing Starship, which is also a very powerful rocket, and they're going to be lifting all of the human landing system that we're going to be bringing to the moon prior to us sending humans, and then we're going to use that to come and bring them down and send them back up. So it is definitely not just a NASA mission. It is it's not even just a US mission. It's really an international mission. We use partners from the European Space Agency and JAXA, which is the Japanese Space Agency as well, which is really cool to see all of us kind of working together and doing it. It's also going to be we're also going to have the first woman and the first person of color. And then Artemis 4, and I like to say Artemis 4 and beyond. Artemis 4 is where we really start to take that science fiction and turn it into science fact. We plan on making a space station similar to the International Space Station, but instead of it going around the Earth, we're going to have one that's going to stay in an orbit around the moon. We're calling it Gateway. We actually have some subject matter experts that are here this weekend that know all about Gateway and they're working on it. It's incredible. So these are amazing engineers. But we are really doing it. Why do you think we want to do a space station around the moon? Why do we want to do that? Any guesses? That's a great guess, and probably that's going to be part of it. A bigger answer, a more broad answer, is that we want to make sure that we have a hub, something that's there, something where we can send humans to it and then go from it down to the moon and come back up. If you climb a mountain, you usually have a base camp. You don't just start and go and come back. So this is going to be kind of like our base camp on the mountains that we're climbing. So it's very, very, very exciting. So I'm going to kind of shift gears a little bit and talk more about careers working at NASA. I'm sure it's going to be pretty interesting, especially for the high school kids, right?
We need you, all of you, to go wherever.
Where no one has gone before, to help humanity reach our collective goals of exploration and discovery.
Unlock our potential side by side, interns, civil servants, and contractors.
You will be mentored, you will be coached, and you will be challenged for your personal growth and for the success of the Artemis mission.
Your talents
Your skills.
and your perspectives are needed to make this possible.
Begin your journey in the realm of the time is here.
The time is now.
I'm friends with all of them. So I'm a little curious. Who thinks they can work at NASA? Like for real, who thinks you can work there? What do you think it takes to work there? It takes a lot, right? What do you think? What does it take to work at NASA?
You have to be pretty smart.
You have to be pretty smart, probably. Maybe you need to get good grades.
Yeah, I mean, there's like a lot of variables in that question. You can't just like put that out there, but not specify.
That's a very NASA answer right there. So I'm going to break down every single misconception you have about working at NASA by telling you a little bit of my story of how I got there. I think you're going to be surprised. I'm also going to show you a little bit of vulnerability and tell you some things that I haven't really opened up to a lot of people. I'm going to try not to get emotional, but we'll see. So, obviously I'm in budget. I love numbers, so I'm going to tell you my story through numbers. There you go. Any questions? I'm kidding. So this first number, 1.5 Whoops. That was my GPA in high school. I did not get my diploma. I did not graduate high school. I was really smart, like really smart, but I didn't apply myself at all. You know, if something was new, challenging, interesting, if there was a deadline the next day, I thrived. I did really well. But if it wasn't, I didn't care. I didn't do any homework. I was the kid who would show up halfway through a class, take the test as best I could, forgot there was a back, didn't write my name, but everything that I filled out, I did really well on. I'm sure all the teachers, you can picture a student, all the parents, you can picture a kid. I'm so sorry I was one of those kids, right? Yeah, I mean, I definitely didn't pay attention. I was definitely not the best student. I was a textbook procrastinator, or I was told I was a textbook procrastinator. I never opened a textbook, so I could never even verify if that was even true. I had zero concept of time management. I was told I had a potential, but I didn't apply myself. I lied to my friends about not graduating, my closest friends. I was embarrassed. I was ashamed. After my senior year, I was hired and quit or was fired from over 15 jobs. I tried to count them, but I'm sure I forgot some. I could have been closer to 20. I've done everything from work in kitchens. I've done film editing. I was in sales. I was a film projectionist. I sold ladies' shoes at Nordstrom. Hardest job I ever had. I was a manager of a few retail stores. You know, I thrived until I didn't, and my ideas were great until they weren't. But what's worse is I blamed everything under the sun except myself for where I was. As I got older, my priorities changed, and I was tired of repeating the same pattern. I wanted a career, I didn't just want a job. And I don't know, maybe it's just boys take longer to grow up. I don't know what it was. I was like 25. And I had this realization, and I think it's the most important realization I've ever had. And if you take anything away today, I want you to take this away. I'm in this position because of me. No one else put me here. No one else can change it but me. You can't change anything unless you give yourself the agency to. So, at 26 years old, I got a high school diploma. It was a GED, so it wasn't even like the diploma the way that everybody else gets a diploma. I took 4 tests over 4 weeks. I studied a little bit, not much, it was at the last second. Can't change everything. But not only did I passed with honors, which means I scored in the 1% of everybody who's ever taken the test. And I learned another lesson. You guys see a pattern that's happening? Starting is often the hardest part. I took 8 years to do something that only took me 1 month, and I barely tried. And it was like, why didn't I do this earlier? It was so easy. It was so easy. Showing up is the hardest part. If you show up, you're already ahead of everybody who didn't, regardless of what you do after that. I learned something else. I didn't put it on here, but I learned something else is I forgot how much I loved learning and challenging my brain. Not that selling ladies' shoes at Nordstrom was not challenging. It absolutely was challenging. So with my newfound love for learning, what was the next step? Well, I went to Eastern Florida State College for 2 years, which is a local college where I live. And then from there, I transferred to the University of Central Florida. Go Knights, charge on. We'll have a better season next season. Anybody want to take a guess on what 3.7 is? That's what's up. That was my GPA when I graduated at UCF, graduated cum laude with a bachelor's in economics, a minor in sociology, and a technical but not technical minor in math, just because you need to do so much math to get an economics major, but they didn't want to give me the credit. I was also a math tutor all through all of this. I realized I love math. And this was not easy at all. I said taking that first test was easy. Doing this, getting this grade, was not easy. I sacrificed time with my friends. I worked weekends because I was working while going to school. I was driving an hour back and forth 4 days a week. UCF is in Orlando. I do not live in Orlando. But I did it. And I learned another very valuable lesson. Actually, 2 lessons. One, success is hundreds and hundreds of tiny choices that you make. It is not one big thing and all of a sudden it's this giant finish line that you do. And it's like, yeah, everybody's... The success happens on those tiny decisions that you make when you say, I'm going to do this instead of that. I'm going to study instead of going out with my friends. I'm going to make this sacrifice because it's going to be an investment in myself to do something better. That is really, in my experience, how you get to the next step and how you get to your goals. The other thing I learned is that I proved where you start is not always where you're supposed to finish. Your starting line absolutely does not dictate your finish line. Yes, we all start at different spots, but that's only one factor, one tiny factor in where we end up. I've been working at NASA for 6 years. And my career at NASA started like most other careers starting at NASA. I applied to an internship that I thought I had a 0% chance of getting. Absolutely none. No way. And I can tell you, most people who apply to internships think the exact same thing. They go, why not? I'll try. I remember that I attached a resume, and I didn't have any relevant experience for what was listed at all. Nothing. But there was a lot of empty space on the page, so I figured I'd just throw everything in there. Why not? So I put that I got a GED. I put multiple irrelevant jobs, and when you start seeing the dates of all these jobs, it was screaming like, this kid just moves around a lot. But I had nothing to lose, so I did it anyway. I had no corporate or true career experience. Guess who was selected for the internship? I was. And not only was I selected, but throughout the summer that I was there, I realized that all of my other jobs I had, I always thought that I was the problem. And NASA showed me that I just wasn't where I belonged. So here's the next lesson I learned. Find your people. I found my people. I feel valued. I feel challenged. I love my job. I also learned that all your experience has value. At 26, I went back to school. I told you I was getting emotional. At 26, I went back to school and I did something that I accepted was impossible, and that was get a college diploma. Well, it turns out that NASA does the same thing. They make the impossible possible. And they want a workforce that's willing to take on challenges, think outside the box, and strive for the stars. So just last year, I was 35 years old. You guys can do the math. So I'm 36 now. I learned that I was twice exceptional. What that means is that I have an intelligent advantage, or you can call it gifted, though I don't like to use that word. But I also have a learning disability. I have ADHD. So are you considered neurodivergent? Yeah. The kid who couldn't pay attention, never did their homework, was late to everything, and lost interest in everything that he did, had ADHD. I was surprised too. But it also really helped me understand myself. You know, I knew my brain worked differently, and now I knew why. So, like any good person in the NASA workforce, I did an incredible amount of research, and I learned a few things. I wasn't alone. ADHD affects 8% of the entire population. My brain wasn't broken. It was just different. And in a world of neurotypicals, I was neurodivergent, and I couldn't change that. But I could change my point of view. And for the first time, I decided it was a positive thing. And now I call it my superpower. And no matter what you're born with or how you think or what you do, part of you, there is a superpower, and it's just about figuring out how to use it and understand it. Do you need someone to jump into a role and learn things extremely quickly? I can do that. Do you need someone to solve a problem in a unique way or come up with a solution that you've never, ever heard before? I can do that too. Is there a deadline that's due tomorrow and you need someone to just grind down and figure it out and do it very quickly? That's the only way I know how to do things. So I figured out a way to use the things that I thought were negatives as positives. And it really changed the way I view myself. You know, I share this story with all of you as proof that you can be different, you can be neurodiverse, you can go back to school later in life, you can change your career, you can have an unconventional path, and you can still work here or work anywhere that you want to go. I am making an assumption, but I can almost confidently say that if you talk to any of the NASA speakers here, they will all give you a unique story of how they ended up there that you would not have assumed. There's a few engineers that just crushed it in school and did everything they were supposed to do, and they're also crushing it at NASA. So you can do that route too. No one's going to stop you. But it doesn't mean if you don't do that, it doesn't mean that you can't work here or work anywhere you want to go. So the last thing is one. You could have picked a bunch of things for one. I chose to say there's one choice that changed my career trajectory in my life, and that was going back and getting my diploma at 26. And what I learned through all of this is that success drives more success. As you do something, the next thing that you need to do becomes easier and closer, and the more you do it, or the closer you get to that, you now have done all these other things, and you can look back and have evidence to give yourself the confidence to hit the next step. So that's my story. I appreciate you guys letting me share it. These are a few jobs that you can do that probably are not what you assume are the things that we do at NASA. I want to point out social media as one of them. We have an amazing social media team, graphic design team, video editors, all sorts of stuff. When you think of NASA, you think engineers, scientists. Yes, of course, we have those. We need those. They're very important. They're all amazing. But you can study almost anything and end up at NASA. We probably have a home for you as long as you love what you do. Show up with passion and willing to solve problems in different ways and think outside the box and work hard. So I'm going to end this with just a few little bits of information about the eclipse, because that's why we're all here. NASA especially is here just to make sure that we all look at the eclipse in a safe way. I'm going to explain to you what that means. We also want to just kind of broaden the participation. We want to kind of just invite everybody here to ask questions to us answer questions that you have, and just kind of just interact and talk and broaden your perspective. We obviously are doing science. You know, NASA's doing science with the eclipse. There's things that we can study that we can only study during an eclipse. We're engaging in the public, and you all being here is a huge part of why we're here. In fact, we wouldn't be here if you guys wouldn't show up. And we want to make sure that you guys are involved in the science. We do have booths over near the state park. I can't tell you more than that because I haven't been there yet, but we have some interactive things as well to get you guys actually involved. And we're also super excited about citizens that are doing their own science, so people that are outside of NASA, but they have a great interest in the sun and the eclipse, and they do their own things, and we're really excited that just the public is doing their own studies. It's absolutely amazing. This wasn't working before, and I guess we're not going to be able to see it. We can just look at it. So this is kind of how an eclipse works. Oh no, it is moving. So that's going to be what a totality, spoiler alert, this is kind of what a totality is going to look like, and then it's going to go away. So it's for that moment, this is sped up, but that's what it's going to kind of look like when it's completely covering it. We call that during its totality. If you can see over here, this is not to scale, everybody. But you can see how you have the sun, and then it shoots light down, and then the moon is going to cover and essentially create a shadow on the Earth, and where that shadow is entirely covering the light is where we call the totality. So the totality is not going to happen everywhere. So if you can see here, That's actually the path, and the reason why that path cuts the way that it does is because of the different factors of the Earth rotating, the way the moon rotates around the Earth, and how everything revolves around the sun. So just a lot of factors. The last time something happened here like this was 100 years ago. I'm sure there's a closer number, 93 years ago, something like that. 99 years. There's always somebody that knows it. Yeah. So, oh, you're the mayor? Cool. Yeah, so 99 years ago. So it's you all are very, very fortunate to be in this area and be able to see something like this. And there's a good chance you won't ever see anything like this. You guys might live to be like 150 by the time. So maybe this will just be your first one. And that's where we are. And we'll see you at about 3:20 p.m. on April 8th. Good luck with the traffic. So, of course, you can get eclipse glasses. They are definitely way different than normal sunglasses. In fact, if you were to put them on and look through this right now and look at, you would actually see nothing. It would be as if you're covering your eyes. But when you look up at the sun, you're going to be able to see it. It's very, 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 very important that you protect your eyes when the eclipse is happening. It might not feel bright, but it is bright. So you definitely cannot look at the eclipse as the moon is moving over the sun. It will hurt your eyes even if it doesn't feel it. If you don't have glasses, there are other ways that you can see it. Basically, if you can create some sort of hole that can shine from the sun down onto like the pavement, you'll be able to see the moon move over the sun. So you can do it a bunch of different ways. You can see him right there. All he's doing is this, and then there you can see the curve is the moon moving over. Pretty neat, right? It looks like it's like a doily. So there you go. The good news is, though, you can look at the eclipse with no glasses during its totality. So you see in the center, when you kind of get this halo, you are able to take your glasses off and look up at the sun. It will be very dark. It will be safe. And but once you see it move over again, pop those glasses back on. So you kind of see the path there. And that is the end of my presentation. I think I went a little over my time. But I am happy to answer any questions. I know that you think you had a few. But yeah, happy to answer any questions you guys have. I have all the time in the world. I see people when you're trying to filter in, so maybe they don't have the time. But yeah, I can answer any questions you guys have.
How much minutes or seconds is the
3:23, I think. Thank you. Again, I throw the guess out, and somebody else here knows the exact. Around 3 minutes. So you'll have time to like snap a picture, do what you got to do. Any other questions about anything?
So Orion has gone into space, and it'll be reused? Is that right? Like the same craft?
No. So that's a great question. No, the Orion craft will not be reused. We do have it. We're studying it. It's actually sitting in a building at Kennedy Space Center. There's a few reasons why we're not reusing those. One is because once we get a cadence for launching, we actually have to be like, we'll have like one on a mission while we're developing the next one, while we're studying the last one. So a lot of it actually has to do with the schedule. So we can do multiple and get ready, because eventually we're going to have a launch every single year. And it depends on what the mission is, how far, because you have to set things up, and if it takes time to set it up and reuse it. But in the future, maybe we can. But for now, we're not.
Is there any jobs at NASA for related
to welding?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, I mean,
Why? Welding.
Yeah, because
connecting things to each other through the art of welding.
Yeah, I probably other than stuff with spaceships. I don't really know what I'm talking about.
I'm gonna put it this way, all right? A lot of the things we build require making two metals connect when they don't want to connect across everything that we do. Building facilities, building rockets, fixing rockets, and we have welders who weld. No, 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 not at all. No, not at all.
You are.
No way.
All questions are right, your questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we definitely have welders. We have every trade that you can imagine that builds things, we have them, and we need them.
What are the steps from something like a welder for NASA?
A welder for NASA? Okay, so if you're interested in any jobs at NASA, if you're in high school, you can look up, we have internships, pathways, look up the phrase pathways, NASA pathways, and that's going to be internships. Usually you join an internship and then you intern until you graduate and you're hired on to be a full-time employee. There's also summer internships through something called OSTEM. And there's also contractor internships where it's not necessarily a civil servant position, but it's a support. It's a support contract that basically does the same things that NASA does as well. It just supports them. I actually started as a support intern, so I wasn't even a NASA intern. It was for a contractor. So for welding or any trade, there's definitely all these companies that work for NASA, also Lockheed Martin, also Boeing. They're all building things that support these missions. Yeah, any trade, you have a very good chance of working out here. You like welding? Cool. You like welding?
Yeah, I'm in process for it. It's like the
Yeah. That's awesome, man. Yeah, dude. Yeah, that's being able to weld. Yeah, money, for sure. Any other questions?
So I teach social studies, and I feel like back in the time of space landing, and it was like a communal spirit around space. Based on your videos, it feels like, is it accurate that NASA is trying to build this, we're in this together, it just feels like that's the vibe NASA's trying to go for, trying to bring everybody into space and make it an American, patriotic part of our essential being. Is that accurate?
That's a great question. Yeah, yes and no. I hate answering questions like that. Something that we kind of forget is that, one of the reasons why NASA was even conceived is because we were in a space race, right? So there was a level of competition that created all of this to begin with. I also believe that competition creates creativity and forces us to do things that we thought we were going to be able to do. But also, I think that we try to inspire people and get everybody on board with space. One, to continue to inspire the young kids to go into STEM degrees. Because we can't have a program if we don't have people in STEM that want to do math, engineering, technology, science. So that's definitely a part of it. As for like patriotic, NASA is a federal agency, so there's always going to be a level of patriotism. It is definitely one of the only things that is supported bipartisan. So, which is if we can find something that we all agree upon, that's awesome. But like I mentioned before, it's not only about this isn't really just an American goal. We use parts that are built by the European Space Agency, Japanese Space Agency. We have a Canadian astronaut going on Artemis 2. So there is always like levels. So of course, we have a Kennedy Space Center. We have a local pride, and we always say we're the best of the best because Kennedy Space Center was rated the #1 center to work for, and NASA was rated the #1 federal agency to work for. So we say that we're the best of the best. But then as you go further out, we'll have a program pride, and then we'll have NASA pride, and then we'll what I mean. So there are levels, but I think that anything that can spark the want to pursue those STEM degrees and pursue science and support us. At the end of the day, we do this on your tax dollars. You know what I mean? So that support is always welcomed, and I think that putting money towards NASA, I don't bias. I think putting money towards NASA is a great investment. Does that answer your question? Kind of. Okay. Anything else about absolutely anything?
Is there any animal-related jobs or
So Kennedy Space Center is on the second largest nature reserve in Florida, just short of the Everglades. So most of Kennedy Space Center is where animals live. And obviously we don't want to harm those animals when we're launching. So yes, especially at Kennedy Space Center, there is a lot of interest in protecting animals. Why do you like animals? Yeah, in fact, when I drive into work, I always see like, there's like hogs and bald eagles, and I mean, it's like I get a little tour of animals every time I walk and drive into work. There's a question in the back?
How many years of college did it take you to get to where you are? Like,
on paper, 4 years of college it took me to get to where I'm at. It took me 5.5 to do it, because I worked as well. I mean, we have education spanning from no education all the way up to multiple PhDs. Education obviously is important, but it's just one factor in your success here. But knowing what to do, I mean, I know that my economics background helps me every day in the job that I do. But I don't have a master's, I only have a bachelor's, and I'm still doing what I do. So, anything else? Awesome, guys. Well, I really appreciate you showing up. I know I love talking with everybody. If you see me around anywhere throughout this next whatever, come say hi to me. Again, my name's Hunter. Remind me where you were at, and I'm happy to say hey and talk to you guys more. And if you guys have any questions, I'm happy to talk to you guys here as well. So.
Oh, have you decided where you're going to watch the game?
I will be at the state park at the booth. I haven't decided. Somebody decided for me where I go, and so I will be at that place. But I mean, it's a pretty large area. You can probably see it from anywhere. Good thing is you can just kind of look up and you're there.
With your goggles.
Yes. Awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.